Hello, friends! Welcome back to another episode of Jenerous Readings and Discussions. On this channel, Paceland Fan Productions, we aim to bring educational entertainment to you. And with this segment specifically, Jenerous Readings and Discussions, I want to bring back entertainment to reading books and starting discussions about them. So thank you again for joining me today. We are now going to listen to and discuss Chapter 4 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki and narrated by me. Chapter 4, Lesson 4, The History of Taxes and the Power of Corporations. My rich dad just played the game smart, and he did it through corporations. The biggest secret of the rich. I remember in school being told the history of Robin Hood and his merry men. My teacher thought it was a wonderful story of a romantic hero who robbed from the rich and gave to the poor. My rich dad did not see Robin Hood as a hero. He called Robin Hood a crook. Robin Hood may be long gone, but his followers live on. I often still hear people say, "Why don't the rich pay for it?" Or the rich should pay for more in taxes and give it to the poor. It is Robin Hood's fantasy, or taking from the rich or giving to the poor, that has caused the most pain for poor and middle class. The reason the middle class is so heavily taxed is because of the Robin Hood ideal. The reality is that the rich are not taxed. It's the middle class, especially the educated upper middle class, who pays for the poor. Again, to understand fully how things happen, we need to look at the history of taxes. Although my highly educated dad was an expert in history of education, my rich dad fashioned himself as an expert on the history of taxes. Rich Dad explained to Mike that originally in England and America there were no taxes. Occasionally there were temporary taxes levied in order to pay for wars. The king or the president would put the word out and everyone would chip in. Taxes were levied for Britain for the fight against Napoleon in 1799 and 1816 in America to pay for the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. In 1874, England made income tax permanently levied on its citizens. In 1913, an income tax became permanent in the United States with the adoption of the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. At one time, Americans were anti-tax. It's been on tea that led us to the famous Tea Party in Boston Harbor, an incident that helped ignite the Revolutionary War. It took approximately about 50 years in both England and the United States to sell the idea of regular income tax. What these historical dates fail to reveal is that both of the taxes were initially levied against only the rich. It was the point that the rich dad wanted to make and Mike and me understand. He explained that the idea of taxes made popular and accepted by the majority by telling poor and the rich and the middle class that the taxes were created only to punish the rich. This is how the masses voted by the law. It became constitutionally legal. Although it was intended to punish the rich, in reality it wound up punishing the very people who voted for it, the poor and middle class. Once the government got a taste of the money, its appetite grew, said Rich Dad. Your dad and I are the exact opposite. He's a government bureaucrat and I'm a capitalist. We get paid and our success is measured on opposite behaviors. He gets paid to spend money and hire people. The more he spends, the more people he hires, the larger his organization becomes. In the government, a large organization is a respected organization. On the other hand, within my organization, the fewer people I hire and the less money I spend, the more I am respected by my investors. That's why I don't like government people. They have different objectives than most business people. As the government grows, more and more tax dollars need to support it. My educated dad sincerely believed that the government should help people. He loved John F. Kennedy and especially the idea of the Peace Corps. He loved the idea so much that both he and my mom worked for the Peace Corps, training volunteers to go to Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. He always strived for additional grants and budget increase so he could hire more people, both in his job with the Educational Department and the Peace Corps. From the time I was about 10 years old, I could hear my rich dad that government workers were a pack of lazy thieves, and from my poor dad, I would hear how the rich were greedy crooks who should be made to pay more taxes. Both sides had valid points. It was difficult to go to work for one, for the biggest capitalist in the town, and come home to a father who was predominant government leader. It was not only easy to know which dad to believe, yet when you study the history of taxes, an interesting perspective emerges. As I say, the passage of taxes was only possible because the masses believed in the Robin Hood theory of economics. Take from the rich and give to everyone else. That's the problem. That was the government's appetite was so great for the taxes soon needed to be levied on the middle class, and from there it kept trickling down. However, the rich saw an opportunity because they don't pay off the same set of rules. The rich knew about corporations, which become popular in the days of sailing ships. The rich created a corporation as a vehicle to limit their risk to file an asset for each voyage. The rich put their money into corporations to finance the voyage. The corporation would hire a crew to sail to the New World and look for treasure. If the ship was lost, the crew lost their lives, but the loss of the rich would be limited only to the money they invested for that particular voyage. The diagram that follows shows how the corporate structure sits outside your personal income and balance sheet. It is the knowledge of legal corporate structure that really gives the rich the vast advantage over the poor and middle class. Having two fathers teach me, one socialist and the other capitalist, I quickly began to realize the philosophy of the capitalists made more financial success to me. It seemed to me that the socialists ultimately penalized themselves due to their lack of financial education. No matter what the take from the rich crowd came up with, the rich always found a way to outsmart them. That is how taxes were eventually levied on the middle class. The rich outsmarted the intellectuals solely because they understood the power of money, a subject not taught in schools. How did the rich outsmart the intellectuals? Once the take the rich tax was passed, cash started flowing into the government coffers. Initially, people were happy. Money was handed out to the government workers and the rich. It went to government workers to form jobs and pensions, and then went to the rich via their factories, receiving government contracts. The government received a large pool of money, but the problem was the physical management of that money. The government ideal is to avoid having excess money. If you fail to tend to your allotted funds, you risk losing it in the next budget. You would certainly not be recognized for being efficient. Business people, on the other hand, are rewarded for having excess money and are applauded for their efficiency. As the cycle of growing government spending continues, the demand for money increased, and the tax the rich idea was adjusted to include lower income levels down to every people who voted in it, the poor and middle class. True capitalists used their financial knowledge to simply find an escape. They headed back to the protection of a corporation. But what many people who have never formed a corporation doesn't know is that corporation is not really a thing. A corporation is merely a file folder with some legal documents in it sitting in some attorney's office and registered with the state government agency. It's not a big building or a fancy factory or a group of people. A corporation is merely a legal document that creates a legal body without a soul. Using it, the wealth of the rich once again protected. It was popular because the income tax rate of a corporation is less than an individual income tax rate. In addition, certain expenses could be paid by a corporation with pre-tax dollars. This war between haves and have-nots have raged for hundreds of years. The battle is waged whenever and wherever the laws are made, and it will go on forever. The problem is that people who lose are the uninformed and the ones who get up every day and diligently go to work and pay taxes. If they only understood the way the rich play the game, they could play it too. Then they would be on their way to their financial independent success. This is why I cringe every time I hear a parent advise their child to go to school so they can play it safe and find a secure job. An employee with a safe, secure job without financial aptitude has no escape. Average Americans today work 4 to 5 hours for the government just to cover their taxes. In my opinion, that is simply too long. The harder you work, the more you pay in government. That is why I believe that the idea from the Take the Rich backfired on the very people who voted on it. Every time people try to punish the rich don't simply comply, they react. They have the money, the power, and the intent to change things. They don't just sit around and voluntarily pay more taxes. Instead, they search for ways to minimize their tax burden. They hire smart attorneys, accountants, and persuade politicians to change the law and create a legal loophole. They use their resources to effect change. The tax code of the United States also allows other ways to reduce taxes. Most of these vehicles are available to anyone, but it's the rich who find them because they are minding their own business. For example, 1031 is jargon for Section 1031 of the Internal Revenue Code, which allows a seller to delay paying taxes on a piece of real estate that is sold for a capital gain through exchange for a more expensive piece of real estate. Real estate is one investment vehicle that has great advantage. As long as you keep trading up in value, you will not be taxed on the gains until you liquidate. People who don't take advantage of these legal savings are missing a great opportunity to build their asset column. The poor and middle class don't have the same resources. They sit there and let the government's needless enter their arm and allow the blood donation to begin. Today, I'm constantly shocked at a number of people who pay more taxes or take fewer deductions simply because they're afraid of the government. I have friends who have their businesses shut down and destroyed only to find out it was a mistake on the part of the government. I realize that. But the price of working from January to May is a high price to pay for that intimidation. My poor dad never fought back. My rich dad didn't either. He just played the game smarter, and he did it through corporations, the biggest secret of the rich. You may remember the first lesson I learned from my rich dad. I was a little boy at 9 who sit and wait for him to choose to talk to me. I sat in the office waiting for him to get to me. He was ignoring me on purpose. He wanted me to recognize his power and desire to have that power for myself one day. During all those years, I studied and learned from him. He always reminded me that the knowledge is power, and with money comes great power that requires the right knowledge to keep it and make it multiply. Without that knowledge, the word pushes you around. Rich Dad constantly reminded Mike and me that the biggest bully was not the boss or the supervisor, but the tax man. The tax man will always take more if you let him. The first lesson of having money is to make money work for you, as opposed to you working for money. It is all about power. If you work for money, you give the power to your employer. If the money works for you, you keep the power and you control it. Once we had this knowledge of the money working for us, he wanted us to be financially smart and not let anyone or anything push us around. If you're ignorant, it's easy to be bullied. If you know what you're talking about, you have a fighting chance. That's why he paid so much for his smart tax accountants and attorneys. It was less expensive to pay them to pay the government. The best lesson to me was, be smart and you won't be pushed around as much. He knew the law because he was a law-abiding citizen, because it was expensive not to know the law. If you know you're right, you're not afraid to fight back, even if you're taking on the Robin Hood and his band of merry men. My highly educated dad always encouraged me to land a good job with a strong corporation. He spoke of the virtues of working your way up the corporate ladder. He didn't understand that relying solely on a paycheck from a corporate employer, I would be a docile ready cow for the milking. When I told my rich dad of my father's advice, he only chuckled. Why not own the ladder? Was all he said. As a young boy, I did not recognize that my rich dad meant by owning my own corporation. It was an idea that seemed impossible and intimidating. Although I was excited by the idea my inexperience wouldn't let me envision the possibility that grown-ups would someday work for a company I would own. The point is, if not my rich dad, I would probably have followed my educated dad's advice. It was merely an occasional reminder of my rich dad that he kept the idea of my owning my own corporation alive and kept me on a different path. By the time I was 15 or 16, I knew I wasn't going to continue the path my educated dad recommended. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was determined not to head in the direction most of my classmates were headed. That decision changed my life. It was not until my mid-20s that my rich dad's advice began to make more sense to me. I was just out of the Marine Corps and working for Xerox. I was making lots of money, but every time I looked at my paycheck, I was disappointed. The deductions were so large, and the more I worked, the greater they became. As I became more successful, my boss talked about promotion and raises. It was flattering, but all I could hear from my rich dad asking in my ear, "Who are you working for? Who are you making rich?" In 1974, while I was an employee for Xerox, I formed my first corporation and began minding my own business. There was already a fewer assets in my asset column, but now I was determined to focus on making it bigger. For those paychecks with all deductions made for all the years of my rich dad's advice made total sense. I could see the future if I followed my educated dad's advice. Many employers feel that advising their workers to mind their own business is bad for business. But for me, focusing on my own business and developing my assets made me a better employee because now I had a purpose. I came in early and worked diligently, amassing as much money as possible so I can invest in real estate. Hawaii was just set to a boom, and there was fortunes to be made. The more I realized that we're in the beginning stages of the boom, the more Xerox machines I sold. The more I sold, the more money I made, and of course, the more deductions came out of my paycheck. It was inspiring. I wanted out of the employee trap so badly that I worked even harder so I can invest more. By 1978, I was consistently one of the top 5 salespeople at the company. I badly wanted out of the rat race. In less than 3 years, I was making more than real estate holding corporation than I was making at Xerox. At the time, the money I was making in the asset column in my own corporation was money working for me, not me pounding the doors selling copiers. My rich dad advice made so much more sense. Soon as the cash flow from my properties was so strong that my company brought me my first Porsche. My fellow Xerox salesperson thought I was spending my commission. I wasn't. I was investing my commission in assets. My money was working hard to make more money. Each dollar in my asset column was a great employee working hard to make more employees to buy the boss a new Porsche before tax dollars. I began to work harder for Xerox. The plan was working. My Porsche was the proof. By using the lessons I learned from my rich dad, I was able to get out of the proverbial rat race at an early age. It was made possible because of the strong financial knowledge I had acquired through my rich dad's lessons. Without his financial knowledge, which I call financial intelligence or financial IQ, my road to financial independence would have been much more difficult. I now teach others and hope that I may share my knowledge with them. I remind people that financial IQ is made up of knowledge from 4 broad areas of expertise. 1. Accounting. Accounting is financial literacy or the ability to read numbers. This is a vital skill if you want to build an empire. The more money you are responsible for, the more accuracy is required or the house comes tumbling down. And this is the left brain side or the details. Financial literacy is the ability to read and understand financial statements which allow you to identify the strengths and weaknesses of any business. Investing. Investing is the science of making money. This involves strategies and formulas that use the creative right side brain. 3. Understanding markets. Understanding markets is the science of supply and demand. You need to know the technical aspects of the market, which are emotion-driven, in addition to fundamental or economic aspects of an investment. Does an investment make sense, or does it make sense based on the current market conditions? The law. A corporation wrapped around technical skills of accounting, investing, and markets can contribute to explosive growth. A person who understands the tax advantage and protects provided a corporation can get so much faster than someone who is an employee or a small business sole proprietor. It's the difference between someone walking and someone flying. The difference is profound when it comes to long-term wealth. Tax advantages. Corporations can do many things that an employee cannot, like pay expenses before paying taxes. It is the whole area of expertise that is very exciting. Employees earn and get taxed, and when they try to live on what is left, a corporation earns and spends everything it can and is taxed on everything that is left. It's one of the biggest legal tax loopholes that the rich use. They're easy to set up, and they're not expensive if you own investments that are producing good cash flow. For example, by owning your own corporation, your vacations can be board meetings in Hawaii. Car payments, insurance, repairs, and health club memberships are company expenses. Most restaurants' meals are partially expenses and on, but it's done legally with pre-tax dollars. Protection from lawsuits. We have in litigious society, everyone wants a piece of your action. The rich may have much of their wealth using vehicles and such corporations and trust to protect their assets from their creditors. When someone sues a wealthy individual, they often met a layer of legal protection and often find the wealthy person actually owns nothing. They control everything but own nothing. The poor and middle class try to own everything and loses it to the government or fellow citizens who sued the rich. They learn from the Robin Hood story, take from the rich and give it to the poor. It's not the purpose of this book to go into specifics of owning a corporation. I will say that if you own any kind of legitimate assets, I would consider finding out more about the benefits and protection offered by a corporation as soon as possible. There are many books written on the subject that will detail the benefits and even walk you through the necessary steps to set up a corporation. Garrett Sutton's book on corporation provides wonderful insight into the power of personal corporations. Financial IQ is actually the synergy of many skills and talents. I would say the combination of the 4 technical skills listed above that make the basic financial intelligence. If you aspire to great wealth, and its simple combination of these skills that will greatly amplify your financial intelligence. In summary, business owners with corporations earn, spend, and pay taxes. Employees who work for corporations earn, pay taxes, then spend. As a part of your overall financial strategy, I recommend that you learn about the protection that legal entities can provide for a business and asset. Study session. Lesson 4. The history of taxes and the power of corporations. Chapter summary. Many people see the Robin Hood as a hero, taking from the rich and giving to the poor. Rich Dad did not share that opinion. He called Robin Hood a crook. Although the popular sentiment is that the rich could pay more in taxes and give to the poor, in reality it is the middle class that is heavily taxed, and especially the educated upper income and middle class. To understand how it happens, Robert gives a brief history of taxes. In England and America, originally there were no taxes, only occasional temporary levies to pay for things such as war. In 1874, England made income tax permanently levied on its citizens. In America, the land where tax on tea led to the Boston Tea Party protests and helped ignite the Revolutionary War, the adoption of the 16th Amendment in 1913 made income tax permanent. These countries were able to get taxes accepted by the majority because they were first levied against the rich. However, although income tax is designed to punish the rich, it wound up punishing those who voted for it, the middle class and the poor. The rich dad explains that he and poor dad were opposite. Poor Dad, as the government employee, was rewarded if he spent money and hired people making his organization. But for Rich Dad, the fewer people he hired, the less money he spent, the more he was respected by his investors. And as the government grows, so does the amount of tax dollars needed to support it. Poor Dad sincerely believed the government should help people. He and Robert's mom worked for the Peace Corps, training volunteers to go to Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. They were always seeking more grants and budgets to increase so they could hire more people. For Robert, it was a challenge to work for one of the biggest capitalists in town and go home to a prominent government leader. It wasn't easy to know which dad to believe. But over time, Robert studied the history of taxes. He saw interesting perspectives. As the government's appetite for money grew, taxes so needed to be levied on the middle class to keep it from trickling down. But the rich saw an opportunity because they don't play the same set of rules. Corporations, which became popular in the days of sailing ships, offered a way around taxes. Understanding the legal corporation structure gave the rich a steep advantage and allowed them to outsmart the intellectuals. The government deal is to avoid having excess money. If you fail to spend your allotted funds, you risk losing it to the next budget. Business people, on the other hand, are rewarded for having excess money and are applauded for their efficiency. As the government continued its ideal and spent more and more money, more taxes, this time on the middle class, eventually the poor were needed, and the corporation is simply a legal document that creates a legal entity. It is not a real thing, not a factory or a group of people. It offers lower income tax rates than the individual has, and certain expenses can be paid by a corporation with pre-tax dollars. If those who get up and go to work at their jobs and pay taxes could only understand the way the rich play the game, they could too. The problem is, the harder you work at a job, the more you must pay the government. Taxes end up punishing the very people who voted for them. Attempt to punish the rich rarely works, because the rich finds a way to maximize their tax burden. One such way is Section 1031 in the Internal Revenue Code, which allows the seller to delay paying taxes on a piece of real estate that is sold for more than a capital gain through an exchange for more expensive real estate. As long as you keep trading up in value, you won't be taxed on the gains until you liquidate. Those who don't take advantage of these savings are missing a chance to build their asset column. In all the years the rich dad was guiding Robert, he was trying to reach them that the knowledge is power. And with money comes power and requires the right knowledge to keep it and make it multiply. Without that knowledge, the world pushes you around. The taxman is a bully who always makes more if you don't let him. Don't let him by making more of your money work for you. Smart tax consultants and attorneys are worth their cost, and it's cheaper than paying the government. It's expensive to not know the laws. In his mid-20s, when he was out of the Marine Corps and working for Xerox, Robert was disappointed about how much was taken out of his paycheck, and it motivated him to form his first corporation in 1974 and work harder at his day job to amass much money as possible to invest in real estate. He became one of the top salesmen at Xerox. In less than 3 years, was making more in his real estate holding corporation than he was at Xerox. His company bought him his first Porsche, proof that the plan was working. The lesson is that he learned from Rich Dad's help him break out of the proverbial rat race at an early age, and he wanted to help others do the same. Financial IQ or financial intelligence is what makes that possible. It is made up of 4 things: accounting, financial literacy, or the ability to read numbers and evaluate strengths and weaknesses of any business; investing, the science and strategies of money making; understanding markets, the science of supply and demand and market conditions; and the law, tax advantages and protections. Understanding those legal advantages is profound when it comes to long-term wealth. For instance, a corporation can pay expenses before taxes, whereas an employee gets taxed first and must try to pay expenses on what is left. Board meeting in Hawaii, car payments, and insurance and health club memberships can be pre-tax expenses for a corporation. Corporations are also offer legal protection from lawsuits. When someone sues a wealthy individual, they are often met with lawyers of legal protection that often find a wealthy person actually owns nothing. They control everything but own nothing. Robert urges who own legitimate assets to find more about corporations to benefit and protections. Gary Sutton's books are among many that can help. In summary, business owners with corporations earn, spend, then pay taxes. Employees who work for corporations earn, pay taxes, then spend. The left hemisphere moment. Accounting is financial literacy, or the ability to read numbers. It is a vital skill if you want to build an empire. The more money you are responsible for, the more accuracy is required, or the house comes tumbling down. Right hemisphere moment. Investing is the science of making money. This involves strategies and formulas which use the creative side of the brain. Subconscious moment. Understanding market is the science of supply and demand, and you need to know that technical aspects of the market, which are emotion driven in the additional to fundamental or economic aspects of the investment. What Robert was saying. Now it's time to reflect and ask yourself, what was Robert saying in this quote? And why does he say that? In this section, you do not need to disagree or agree with Robert. The goal is to understand what Robert is saying. Remember, this curriculum is designed to be cooperative and supportive. Two minds are better than one. If you do not understand what Robert is saying, don't shy away from it. Ask for help in understanding it. Take time and discuss each quote until you understand it. My rich dad just played the game smart, and he did it through corporations. The biggest secret of the rich. The reality is that rich are not taxed. The middle class who pays for the poor, especially the educated and upper middle class. Every people try to punish the rich. The rich don't simply comply. They react. They have money and power and the intent to change things. They don't just sit there and voluntarily pay more taxes. If you work for money, you give the power to your employer. If money works for you, you keep the power and you control it. A person who understands tax advantages and protections provided a corporation can get rich so much faster than someone who is an employee or a small business sole proprietor. It is the difference between someone walking and someone flying. Employees earn and get taxed, and they try to live on what is left. The corporation spends everything it can, and is taxed on everything is left. It's one of the biggest legal tax loopholes that the rich use. Now, it's time to take the stories in this chapter along with understanding what Robert was saying and apply them to your life. Ask yourself these questions below and discuss them with the study partner. Be honest with yourself and your partner. If you do not like some of the answers you are giving, ask yourself if you're willing to change and accept the challenges to change your thoughts and mindset. 1. Do you agree with Rich Dad's assessment of Robin Hood? Was he a crook? Why or why not? 2. Have the taxes created a bigger problem with government spending? 3. Do you think members of the middle class and the poor realize the burden of taxes has fallen to them? What effects of that do you see? 4. Do your beliefs fall more under the banner of capitalism or socialism? What are the benefits of downfalls of each way of thinking? 5. Are the rich right to use the advantages of the corporations to avoid paying taxes? Do you think more people should follow suit if they understood the system better? 6. What are the specific ways that you yourself could benefit from using corporations for your assets? Term definitions. 1031. Jargon for Section 1031 for the IRS Code, which allows the seller to delay paying taxes on a piece of real estate that's sold for capital gain through exchange for a more expensive real estate. Corporation. A legal tax document that creates a legal body without a soul. It's not a building, a factory, or a group of people. Using it, the wealth of the rich is protected. Financial IQ. Financial intelligence comes as a result as financial education. People with financial IQ learn to use other people's money to become rich. Financial literacy. The ability to read and understand financial statements, which allow you to identify the strengths and weaknesses of any business. The audio clip has now ended, and the video will now start if you would like to join in. We are now going to be talking about Chapter 4, Lesson number 4. And again, we're going through the study session questions and the quotes that he has. So for the additional question, the first question is, do you agree with Rich Dad's assessment of Robin Hood? Was he a crook? Why or why not? In this chapter, Rich Dad says that Robin Hood, let me backtrack a little bit. Robin Hood's main objective was to steal from the rich and give to the poor. And in this sense, Rich Dad was saying he was a crook because those people are not working for them. Like, they're not working for themselves, and they're not doing anything to build their own capital. Everyone can do that. And just by having someone who's a vigilante that gives to other people doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, because people then don't fight for themselves and they don't learn the abilities that they need to be more resilient in the problems that come at them. The second question is, have taxes created a bigger problem with government spending? So the government gets money from our taxes, and taxes have been increased over the years. And I do believe that the government is taking more money from the people, because the thing is, when it comes to our income statement, and this is what Rich Dad says, that poor people look at their income statements while rich look at their asset statements and things like that. And I believe that's true, because most of the time people aren't even looking at their income statement, and then when they do, a lot of that money is taken out. Like half of your paycheck is taken due to taxes, and that's just crazy, because it's crazy because no one bats an eye about it, and we continue to let them take our money, and we don't know what kind of government assistance it's going to or how it's helping other people. And that's really important to know. And I think that's important to know is because if we're not consciously looking at where the money is being funded, how do we know that our government officials are doing what we need them to do as our government officials? I am flabbergasted by the world today, because we complain about, like, oh, this political leader does that or whatever, but no one goes to vote or is familiarized with the policies that we're voting on to make things better. And it's our job to understand and get educated to make sure that we're not we have to be careful when we're not acting, because then a choice will be made because we are not the ones to push that choice, because most people have left it aside and not thought about it. It is really important to be involved, even though you don't want to choose a side with politics. It's important to know about the politics so you as an individual can make an informed decision. Otherwise, decisions will be made for you and you have nothing left but to complain. And it's more about having a proactive being proactive towards the problem than reactive. Question 3. Do you think members of the middle class and the poor realize the burden of taxes has fallen onto them? What effects of that do you see? For sure, the middle and poor are in that class because it's one, hard to get out of, and I think it's hard to get out of because people are not looking at their asset statements or mainly focusing on their income statements. And when they are focused on the income statement, they are not questioning why so many taxes are being taken out, and they just try to make more money without trying to lower their taxes so they get to keep more instead of spending more. I see the effects when it comes to my family members, like just people that I know and hang out with, and I know this is a problem for everyone in my surrounding because I am currently in the middle class situation, and you know, it is a problem that I have heard of. 4. Do your beliefs fall under the banner of capitalism or socialism? What are the benefits and downfalls of each way of thinking? So I looked up what capitalism and socialism were via Google, and capitalism is an economic and political system in which a country trades and industries are controlled by the private owners for profit rather than the state. And for socialism is a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned and regulated by the community as a whole. So capitalism is an individual who started it, controlling it, and socialism is a group effort, according to Google. And his question was, so which way does my belief fall under, and what are the benefits and downfalls of each way of thinking? So I don't think either one is better per se. I believe my beliefs fall in between both of them. That it takes someone to start something, and a lot of people don't want to go along with it at first, but a company cannot thrive without a network under it. But it always takes the initial person to have that good idea and for people to follow along with it. The benefits of capitalism is that you have someone who's the leader kind of thing, and it's someone who had the vision, who wants to start it. With socialism, I feel like if you leave it up to everyone, it's just like, it's like the bystander effect. Like, if you have too many people around, they'll think somebody else will do it, and it usually doesn't get done. Versus if it's an individualistic way, and you're just like, well, I'm just gonna do it because I want it done, you'll just get it done. And the downfall of those two sides is that, again, we're depending too much on an individual or a collective, and it needs to be a good mesh of both. 5. Are the rich right to use the advantages of corporations to avoid paying taxes? Do you think more people should follow suit if they understood the system better? No, they're not wrong, because they're learning how to play a very complex game that we have not been taught. And it's just a matter of fact of learning the game. People don't get mad when you go play basketball and then you get completely creamed, because people know, like, if you don't play basketball, you probably don't know too much about it, and you're just trying to play just to play. And a lot of people are just players in a game that they don't understand. And the rich people are just really good players who understood the rules and took the time to learn the rules and had a head start on learning the rules. And it's not impossible for individuals to do that, but it is very difficult, and we just need to work really hard at trying to understand how the rules are played and how to play them into our advantage. 6, what are the specific ways that you yourself could benefit using corporation for your assets? So in another book that was recommended by Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's written by like a lawyer. It's like Garrett Sutton Esquire. He talks about how building a corporation and being able to use the profits from that corporation that you have built to also fund the things that you would need, like being able to, you know, figure out how much a rental space it would be, and then having the rental space within your home and using that rent to pay yourself, and to use the revenue from your business to also benefit your personal. But you need to be careful with the way you do this and look up the laws, and please do more education on it, as I'm only, like, I want to reiterate, I am only learning alongside you currently, and I don't have all the answers yet. So these are the things that I've simply learned and I'm trying to apply, and I have not yet had the results. So I am experimenting with myself currently, trying to see if I'm able to reap those results as I'm reading in the books. So those were all the additional questions from this chapter. I'm going to now be moving on to the quotes of what Robert was saying. The first quote is, "My rich dad just played the game smart, and he did it through corporations, the biggest secret of the rich." Second quote, "The reality is that the rich are not taxed. It's the middle class who pays for the poor, especially the educated upper income middle class." Quote number 3, "Every time people try to punish the rich don't simply comply, they react. They have the money, power, and intent to change things. They don't just sit there and voluntarily pay more taxes." So those 3 quotes right there mean a lot to me, because we are in a reactionary state instead of being proactive, especially when it came to this pandemic. Everybody's like sitting around waiting for things to happen. I know some people try to get in the stock game, but I know the stock game is truly rigged because of that whole GameStop thing that happened, where like regular people put a whole bunch of money in it while the rich people pulled out or whatever, and caused like the inflation, and they shut shit down. But the game is rigged, so learn how to play the game. Because you can be one of those rich people. It's rigged against poor and middle class, but you can also get out of that and be a rich player than a poor and middle class one. If you work for your money, you give power to your employer. If money works for you, you keep the power and control it. I've talked about this on another episode, how it really grinds my gears that people have to ask for time off and having to get permission to do things or whatever because it's their livelihood, because they need to make money. And it's just nonsense to believe that any one person or any group of people have dictation over anybody else and what they can do with their lives and how they spend it with their family. And having this construct around us is detrimental, because now we're suffering in the sense we don't have true fulfillment, and we know that true fulfillment is being able to spend your time, your money. And I use time and money interchangeably because people are buying out your time for money. So I consider those both currencies. And when you pay attention, it's a transactional event that's happening for you to either gain knowledge, gain entertainment, or what have you, gain something, and you are paying for it with your attention. Having that said, I think it's really important that he says it in this chapter, in a different chapter, but it's to mind your own business. And it's something that I'm learning right now how to do, and to continuously mind my business when I'm not working my job. He also gives the acronym of job as just over broke, and the difference between what is your profession and what is your business. Again, separating the two and investing in the latter will be better for the long run, but again, you just have to do it. It's all on the individual level. No matter how much education can come to you, if there's no action put behind it, it really is moot point, and there's just, you know, you really just have to do the work. And I hope the content that's being brought to you and the things that you're consuming are in alignment with what you need to be able to succeed, because I truly want you to succeed. A person who understands tax advantages and protections provided by a corporation can get rich so much faster than a person who is an employee or a small business sole proprietor. It's like the difference between someone walking and someone flying. Employees earn and get taxed, and they try to live on what is left. A corporation earns and spends everything it can and is taxed on anything that's left. It's one of the biggest legal tax loopholes that the rich use. There's things that are put in place in this world that was done a long time ago that was meant to be helpful for the poor people, and it's flipped by the rich to be their advantage. And taxes are one of those things, and by learning how to do that, I truly believe someone will be way more beneficial to their income and their dreams of doing what they need to do. I truly believe everybody needs to work in the sense of doing something that's fulfilling with your life as a human being. You need to be a productive member of society. And if you're not, we come to a society where everybody is dependent on each other, but no one wants to help. And that is the culture that needs to change, because we're all in this together, in the words of High School Musical. We truly are all in this together, and I hope you guys want to join me in boosting not just regular literacy, but financial literacy, to help us as a collective get out of this scarcity mindset. I truly believe that with the right amount of compassion, education, tenacity, and drive, we can definitely make this the world we want to see it. So those were all the questions and the quotes for this chapter. I truly want to thank all of you again for being here with me today and getting to the end of this video and sharing this discussion with me. Please leave your comments below, like, subscribe, and even share it with someone that you might think will benefit from this. I truly want to hear from you, and I hope you all have a great day. Be the gift that keeps on giving, and stay generous, my friends.